Hello, I'm John Mayer, and welcome to, I think this is probably the 7th or the 8th, my virtual Jericho, which we've been doing during lockdown. They're all on Wednesday afternoons about 5, or usually. If you've missed any of them, they're all on YouTube. You catch up with them there. Some of them have had enormous numbers. Sir Richard Peter has had 280 to 300 tuned into him. So everything for the next hour is on the record. The next few weeks, Layla Moran has finally agreed to face the camera on Monday, June the 1st at 4 o'clock. So Layla will be talking about Parliament, CV, and being leader of the Liberal Party, which she will hopefully wants to be 2-3 weeks after that. Danny Dorling the week after that, Professor Danny Dorling on the social geography of Jericho. He was conceived here. He says he wasn't born here. He was born in the Cowley Road, and then that's 3rd of June. And first of all, though, today let's dream, shall we? Let's dream Jericho. What it's going to be like post-COVID and in 5 years' time. I did ask about 15 people to take part in this. Only 3 so far have had the courage to face the camera. It's about what do we want for our communities? How do we get it? This is what the Daily Mail describes as the natural home of the Oxford Liberal elite. So let's take it from there. Okay. First off, the new and the very, very popular vicar of St Barnabas, Father Christopher Wood. He's fresh air in those Victorian Isles. Father Chris, over to you.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I'm newish. I've been here for nearly 18 months, believe it or not. I've been a vicar since February 2019. There are 3 things that I think I would like to see Jericho become or continue to become post-COVID. The first is to enjoy community as it always has done. So one of the wonderful things about Jericho, I find, is its sense of community. And it's very inclusive, it's very diverse. And I particularly struck by the way that all organizations and people have pulled together, particularly during this pandemic, to help the vulnerable and help those who are isolating, help those who are sick, help those who don't have any means of getting to the shops. It's been a real positive effort, really. And the church has, in a way, been part of the centre of that. We've kind of helped coordinate some of the volunteer efforts. And, that's where I see the church very much flourishing as part of the common good in the community. And I think that is really something to go forward for the future in the Jericho community, is the community spirit. The other thing is cooperation. Now, cooperation means listening as well as putting your points of view across. One thing I've noticed about Jericho, which is it's not a criticism, it's a very positive thing, is that people have very strong opinions and like their opinions to be heard. And that's good. And it's good to be opinionated and to think strongly and to have strong feelings about big issues. And Jericho is facing some relatively big issues in the future in the community. I'm thinking particularly, of course, of the boatyard development, which sits just beside the church. And it really does affect the whole of the Jericho community. Only with cooperation with all parties will something good and positive happen. And we are working on that basis at the moment with JWT and the developers. It's not an easy thing to do. Cooperation means compromise a bit, sacrificing some of your well-held views in order to help the community common good. So I think a greater sense of cooperation might be good. I certainly feel that we can build on that in the future. And then the other thing, the third word, is confidence. I think to be confident of not only our heritage and our community spirit, but also our uniqueness is something to be celebrated. So we can be very confident about the beautiful and very special community that we have physically, as well as people. And I was very struck, particularly at the funeral of Betty Daniels, who everybody in Jericho knows, a few months ago, how everybody just came together to give her the best send off, really, that anybody could have. She died alone. She died without any family, but my goodness, she had a massive family of community, and that really, to me, was the signal of how a community like Jericho can come together and be confident in looking after each other. So I really feel that sense of altruism from people, that we are caring for each other and looking after each other. So community, let's build on the community. Cooperation, let's be more cooperative. Let's listen as well as talk, and let's be confident about the great unique community that we have. So those are the three things that I think will spur us on into the future.
Father Christopher, 3 or so questions from me. I'm surprised you say people have strong opinions. You're a man from a Protestant town in Northern Ireland. You're used to this, aren't you?
Yes, I didn't say I didn't have strong opinions either. I do have very strong opinions, but I've had to learn to temper them a bit. But yes, one develops a sense of listening skills when you're from Northern Ireland. Yeah.
The boatyard.
Yeah.
How realistic is it that that's going to be built? I get the feeling it's a unicorn. People are asking for unicorns all the time now.
Well, I mean, it's frustrating. It is very much a sense that certainly before the lockdown, there was a sense of, right, we really need to get on with this and get this done for the good of everybody. And it needs to be a development which works, not just something that might look good on paper. What the pandemic will do to this, I don't know. I've got no updates really on that. I suspect it'll slow things down a little bit, but who knows? I hope that we can push ahead as quickly as possible to get something that will really enhance the local community for everybody. One of the things that I've really noticed is that there's so many different groups that really want the same thing. We're all working together on it. There's no kind of warring factions. I don't think in the community. We all want the best development for everybody.
14 years though is a long time.
Very long time, yes. I can see that. That's really frustrating.
Do you expect?
I don't really know what the key is to unlock that.
Will it be built in your lifetime?
I would pray so, yes.
But it's going to be misery for you for 2 or 3 years with all the work going on.
Yes, we haven't quite thought of that. It may be that we have to move out for a little while. I don't know.
Now, you're reopening the church on September the 13th. Is that right? Is that on Sunday the 13th September?
Well, that was what I was hoping. There is rumour that churches might open in some degree in July, but we're not sure yet. That might only be for private prayers. But ideally, we would like to have a kind of more celebratory reopening in September. Yeah, just after the Jericho Street Fair, if that happens.
How have your parishioners coped with the pandemic in terms of worship and so on?
They've been really resilient and really good. We've done everything online, like most people, and we've really risen to the challenge. It's not easy doing a service to an empty church in front of a camera. I can tell you, it's very, very disheartening. But one of the lovely things that we do is sometimes use Zoom for kind of coffee gatherings and things, and really lovely to see and hear people. I think that the biggest challenge to people is not being able to gather together. I think that's the real challenge. Is seeing each other on a screen is not quite the same, and being able to pray together. That's another challenge. So while some people actually really love the quiet and love the chance to have a retreat almost, people are really flourishing in that way. Others are feeling very lonely and isolated.
Your thing about community, your C point, do you feel that's sort of a Christian community? Has it shown elements of Christianity to it?
Well, I think that good community and community that's cohesive is Christ-like. It's Christian, but doesn't have to be full of Christians, if you know what I mean. It can be with any people of any faith or none. It's just that Christianity is very much pro community, if you like. It's very for people, and it's very for the common good. So, does that answer your question a little bit?
Oh, it sort of does. I just wonder whether people have discovered that there's more to life than egotism. Life is beyond you. It's just beyond you yourself, and that's a very Christian attitude.
Yes, I think so. I think people have started to rethink, where they belong in the world and what's going to happen in the future. Where do we go from here? People are taking stock. People are asking deeper questions. So yes, I think that's very much part and parcel of people's Christian awareness, I suppose.
Do you expect more people to come to church after the pandemic is finished, when you open again for business?
Initially, probably not, because we will have to be restricting numbers, social distanced worship, which we haven't quite worked out yet. But I think one of the things I noticed is lots of people online joining in. So if we can manage to keep both, and if we can, when we open the church, have people in the service, but also people who can't yet manage to get to church will join in online. So yes, I think long term the answer is yes, I do.
So you're going to have a hybrid when you come back. You're going to have real people and virtual people.
I think so. Okay. If we can manage it, yes.
Feel free when the others have spoken to ask them questions. Secondly, Joelle Mann, who I hope is there, who's
I'm here.
A local. Oh, she's inside now. Last time I saw her, she was outside.
I know.
A bit of a local character. You'll see her in a bicycle with flowers in it here, there, and everywhere. And she's in Jericho when she's not an R&R in India. But as far as I can tell, you're in Victor Street today, are you, Joelle?
I am indeed. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
I came indoors because the internet connection wasn't completely stable.
Well, the favoured home of the liberal elite is obviously not that great on broadband. Your vision for the future of Jericho?
Well, now, my impression was we were being asked not for the future of Jericho, actually, but my dreams for Walton Street.
Okay, well, give us those dreams.
Okay, because that's what I answered to. But I mean, Jericho is, large. A part of Jericho is its connection with Walton Street. So I'm going to read it, if you don't mind, initially, because I thought it'd make it easier. I said, I dream of a solution that satisfies all those who live on Walton Street, those who live in Jericho and in Walton Manor, between St. Bernard's Road and Little Clarence Street, and those who like using it for other purposes than using it as a rat run to get to West and South Oxford. A solution needs to be found for deliveries to businesses in the area, but I can see that business want punters to have access to their premises by car. A possible solution could be something that I thought at one stage was mentioned, which would be an underground car park. And my suggestion would be this car park would be on the Radcliffe site between the Blavatnik and the Mathematical Institute. And I would want that car park to have a maximum of 3 hours stay to allow for restaurants and also performances at the Phoenix and in the church, indeed, which is often used as a very appreciated performance venue. And I would want the access to that car park, if it were to exist, to be exclusively from Woodstock Road, not down Walton Street. Then there's the issue of the junction at the south end. So there needs to be a bus gate at the south end to allow essential vehicles to access Jericho from the south, including taxis and ideally some form of public transport. And it occurred to me that this could be, for those who wanted it, we could, as individuals or families, subscribe to a minibus of some kind. I can't see why we can't, agree to pay an annual subscription. It would then guarantee some form of income to the company, whoever was running it. And I thought it might be, but that would be probably even more disapproved of by a number of people, to have a bus gate at the St. Bernard's Walton Well Road junction at the top to stop, potentially to stop people going down there who don't need to. I think in due course that technology actually should enable any Jericho residents who have a car to have car recognition, number plate recognition, which could let them through the bus gate. There's no reason why that shouldn't happen. Anyway, to be thought about. In terms of OUP, who are a very large employer in the area, I think that those of their people who go there by car, I don't know if any of the staff or the people who work there, I know there are people from outside who go to OUP, other publishers or writers or whatever. I think large numbers of them come by public transport. If they wanted to allow people to come, they have a time-limited parking permit for the car park at the back there by alleys, which could be used. But short-term visitors with cars, they could use the car park under the new Radcliffe building site. I did think that it might be possible to change the direction of Walton Street and St. Bernard's Road, make them go the other way. That might make it easier for the lorries and things, but then St. Bernard's Road is very narrow. If the buses, I don't know. I just wanted to flag that because there's no particular reason why Little Clarendon Street has to be east-west. It could be west-east. I don't know. So that was just a thought. I also thought that if the businesses on Walston Street really want, the lorries and maybe people to come, maybe they can be asked to contribute in some sort of way to maintenance of the bus gates. I don't know. I think there has to be some sort of discussion, at least, not just a sort of them and us situation, which is a little bit what seems to me to be happening at the moment. I would like to see a wide pavement on the east side of Walton Street with trees every so often to provide greenery and carefully selected trees so they don't block the light of the houses on the east side. Because at the moment, there's an absolutely useless pavement on the west side. It's narrow. You can't really, you can't pass if there's somebody with a pushchair on it, doesn't work, or a wheelchair or even shopping trolley. So I think that if we had a wide pavement in that bit of Walton Street anyway, between Little Clarendon and Beaumont Streets, you could have a single pavement, which could be a bit wider, car parking on the opposite side, and then the middle for bicycles. We don't need that width of street for bicycles, really. I know maybe people have to be able to turn their cars to go back south to north. I haven't thought that one through. That's for engineers. Yes, about the trees, I thought that we should ask the city council to water them in while they're settling in, because I know they are watering at the moment the new tree at the bottom of Walton Street, opposite the bookies, where the Greening Jericho is planting lots of plants. Greening Jericho, and there's another Jericho wild greenery.
Wild in Jericho.
Yeah, that's right. And I think those, I've have encouraged both sides to speak to each other, because I think there's a potential them and us there as well, which is a pity. So yes, I'd like to see the parking in that part of Jericho to be only on the west side. And maybe we need, in several places along Walton Street, shopping bays for no more than two cars, because nobody who comes to shop, whether it be the co-op or, I don't know, the post office when he deigns to open, or, you know, Daisy's, nobody needs to be there for more than half an hour to shop. Even I used to work in the mine shop, and I know most people are never there for as long as half an hour. I thought it would be nice to have some benches on the east side of Walton Street, a few, maybe some of the local businesses, the Little Clarence Street people maybe might be interested in sponsoring, or residents, I don't know. I'm just floating ideas, or dreams, I suppose. I am annoyed by the way that Herzog and de Meuron designed the area around the Blavatnik. I did go to a lecture about that, and I know it's to do with flows, but I think architects, you know, they sit at their computers in Geneva and they just designed flows, but they don't live here. And it's a horrible place. It's all concrete slabs and no greenery. And I would like the Blavatnik to be lent upon, to put some, you know, there can be raised beds with bushes. They don't have to be trees. There's two miserable trees, and they're not growing well there. So I'd like the Blavatnik to have to do something about that. Then there's a little building between the new Somerville building and the co-op at just before there by the shops. That I know was being looked after by Wendy Ball, and I'm hoping that as part of the sort of regreening of Jericho, something will happen there, you know, with some greenery, some plants or some stuff growing up the walls. And further from Walton Street, but very much accessed via Walton Street, and God knows what would happen during building, the boatyard development, if it ever happens, you know, is very much, there's a whole issue about how all the lorries and the people who live in the boatyard development, how they will get there. Will they use just Great Clarendon Street? I don't know, but I think, you know, all of Jericho is part of Walton Street and vice versa, really. And I very much, by the way, wanted to flag my desire for the boatyard development not to be a gated community, like, you know, the Lucy's flats off the top of Walton Street, and also the little development behind the Rackley Farms, or whatever it's called, that, what's it called nowadays? The Ruddy something. I never go there because they had live music and they won't turn it down. I also think that there should be enough litter and dog litter bins around Walton Street and generally around Jericho, because there aren't very many. And I would like the telephone box outside OUP to be removed, part of my tidying up Virgo and Swiss personality, I suppose. It serves no purpose, doesn't work as a phone box, and it's just a mess. All it does is collect rubbish. And I think a lot could be happening in Walton Street. You, John, you know, had planned your July Fest there. You were going to extend, weren't you, what was going to be happening in Little Clarendon
The
Street?
August Bank Holiday, Joel.
What?
August Bank Holiday fest in Clarendon Street, and probably a cycle fest in Walton Street. Turn it over to the cycle.
Good. I did wonder, and maybe Christopher, that's, well, I don't know, it's really for the JCA, but I wondered whether, if it ever happens that Walton Street is sort of expanded, whether we could have the Jericho Street Fair there rather than down here. Would make it more accessible to the city. That's just something that I'm just floating. And that's
Are you
about
ready-
it, really.
Ready to ask you a few questions?
Yeah.
Now, let's start with a little bit. Mount Place, which is having some wonderful, wonderful stone put into it, and will look wonderful. Who's going to look after it?
Well, I understand that this is something that's been organized by Greening Jericho in conjunction with the council.
Right.
I wasn't party to that, but that's what I've been told, because I noticed that the grouting between those beautiful stones is absolutely hideous. And my understanding initially was that there was going to be gaps between the stones so that there could be, little plants that grow. I can't remember. There are different types. You've got chamomile and thyme and stuff like that. Doesn't grow. However, I had a conversation with the guy who's in charge of the work there. And he said, oh, I'm just working from the drawings I've got. And he said, these are reclaimed stones. And if they're not stuck together, they'll float and they won't be safe. And apparently there'll be wide borders there. So we'll be planting a lot of stuff. And my hope.
Who'll be planting and who'll be looking after it?
Well, I mean, it should be a joint council and the two greening organizations.
I just worry, how are we going to stop it becoming a junkie's paradise again?
I don't know. I mean, I don't run any of those organizations. I don't know if it's a completely sort of, proto-democratic outfit. We all belong to a WhatsApp group. We swap plants and we take our watering cans and we go and water the flower border and that sort of thing. I don't know what level of negotiations, if any, have taken place. So I can't answer that bit of your question.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the community to show itself as a community and have a community garden there. And
yeah.
I'm intrigued to follow it. However, that's above your pay grade. Let's move on to Walton Street and the space you want to put the underground car park in. Why do you need an underground car park? With one of the effects of closing off Walton Street is there's car parking spaces galore. Little Clarendon Street. If I were a local restaurateur, I would buy up lots of chits and say to people who want to come, "Here's a chit. Go and park it in Great Clarendon Street." There's no problem with parking now, or do you see?
At the moment, but I don't think we can make any judgment about car parking at the moment during lockdown. People aren't coming into town at the moment.
Okay, but it was like
and half the restaurants in there are closed anyway. So the shops are closed, the restaurants are closed. What do people want to go to Little Clarendon Street for? Everything's closed except for the ice cream place.
The ice cream and the cheese place.
And the cheese place, yeah.
The two local heroes, Little Clarendon Street. I just think.
But technically, John, they are not in Jericho. I'm sorry. Jericho's borders are the west side of Walton Street. That is on the maps and agreed nationally.
But when lockdown finishes, I would estimate a good one in 3 shops or restaurants will not come back.
Well, that's nothing to do with Walton Street being closed. That's to do with lockdown generally.
Right.
Is it? I don't know.
I mean, I've heard the post office, for example, may not reopen.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me. That guy doesn't deserve to be alive. He's so unpleasant. Do you know, I go in there. I said to him one day, I said, do you know what? I make a special effort to come and shop in your shop because you're a local shop. I would love it if you occasionally gave me a smile instead of having your nose in your phone. And I told his dad, because his dad owns the shop, at the beginning of New Inn Hall Street or whatever it's called down there. And he said, oh, I know. He said, he's a perfect so-and-so.
Oh, well, no, but you will have a much, much reduced retail footfall and restaurant footfall. So that'll change. And also the space where you want to put the car park, there's going to be a concert hall, isn't there?
Well, no, I don't know, because you see, the Sheldonian people are very powerful. They managed to stop the North Wall having a proper concert hall up there because they wanted the concerts to go on going to the Sheldonian. It's a very lucrative place.
But somebody's given 150 million quid to build a rather fancy building there.
Yeah,
with
but
a
that's
console.
supposed to be mostly, I understood that was really for faculties, English language, all the humanities were supposed to be regrouping there. I
With a
did
console.
hear about a concert hall, yes, but I mean, maybe
Would
that'd
you
be
rather,
good.
would you rather a concert hall or a car park?
Oh, I'd rather have a concert hall anytime. You know me. I go to the concert 3 times a week.
Okay, let's talk about buses. I mean, a bus gate is obviously needed at the end of at the Worcester Street end of Walton Street, and that will happen. Walton Street's now closed until May 2021. By the way, there's no ifs or buts. That's it. The council's decided that. Buses have been tried before, and they haven't. They've commercially they failed, subsidised they failed. I, as you know, run a shopping bus or try to run a shopping bus. That works. You know, how is it ever going to work if it has not worked before?
I think, well, that's why I floated the idea. I don't know how many residents there are in Jericho.
It's about 800 to 1,000, I think.
Even 50% of the people who really want, how many? How many?
You're frozen, but carry on talking.
How many? I mean, I think we could ask residents if they wanted to pay, I don't know, an annual subscription. You know, if we don't have a car, we don't have to pay for a resident car park. Okay, that's 100 quid a year. I would happily pay 100 quid a year to instead of a resident car park. I don't have a car, but you know, that's me. I haven't got a car, so I don't know. I mean, it's just floating ideas, really.
Bon chance with the idea of the bus. It has. I'm going to ask you sort of one last question. I looked at some figures today. The drop in air pollution in central Oxford is the second biggest in Britain. It's huge, massively huge. All this, and I'm trying to get the figures. I mean, isn't that worth closing Walton Street just for that? So people can breathe.
Oh, I mean, John, I'm in favor of closing Walton Street, period. You don't have to convince me. I want it closed. You know, I mean, I'm a cyclist. I walk. I've noticed myself that since coming back from India at the end of March, I no longer have to use my puffer. I was having to use a puffer for older person's asthma, and I don't have to use it anymore. So that's your answer to the pollution.
Your life has been saved, or your quality of life has been saved, surely.
Well, my quality of life has been greatly improved, and my life may have been prolonged.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let's move on if we can. One of the casualties of the closure of Walton Street is St Bernard's Road, right at the end, by the joke shop. Patrick Davey, you represent the guerrilla army in St Bernard's Road. You've become a sort of mini rat run, haven't you? I just wonder. Can you put your vision of the future of Jericho, as Jericho stroke St Bernard's Road?
Certainly, and thank you for promoting me to the sort of generalissimo of the revolution. I think I'm entirely self-appointed, and I believe I speak for people. Though, in fact, the thrust of my talk was going to be slightly different. I mean, just to divert for 1 nanosecond to St Bernard's Road, it is an absolutely terrible problem. And it certainly requires a solution. There's no ambiguity. You know, Walton Street was shut. The overwhelming majority of that traffic now comes up St Bernard's Road on top of what we already had, which was our fair share. And there are some sort of principles, I think, for traffic management, that each area should look after its own traffic, that the traffic should take the shortest possible route to the main road if it's departing or entering, whether it's, you know, Jericho into Beaumont Street or Walton Manor up St Bernard's Road to Woodstock Road. And I think equity is really important. But actually, so that's sort of my platform and where I come from, and how I've got engaged with the whole process and met John and others. But really, my thinking about the area is a rather sort of blue skies thinking, and is perhaps aspirational and complete pie in the sky. But I think the area is really important. It's got a number of very critical advantages. The first is location, and there are 2 aspects to location. The first is we are in Oxford, which is a it's obviously a local city, but it's also very much an international city. And I think that's really important to understand. And there's that sense of community, both local people as well as this vast number of people from around the world. And the second aspect of the location of Jericho and Walton Manor is our proximity to the town centre. And I think that that's really important in what we are and how we can develop. So I'd like to see a vibrant community. That particularly means vibrant community in the public spaces, and people coming in to join in that community, people who've been working in the university or going to the museums, or tourists. So that's the sort of the vision. And the question is then, how do we achieve that and have a vibrant community? So the first thing is, I think the environment it's really important. The physical environment needs to be good. And by the physical environment, I mean exactly what Joelle was saying about breathing. And this is about breathing and pollution. And pollution comes both as, exhaust fumes, but also the noise from cars, the road noise, that sort of sense of industrialization and busyness, which personally I don't like. And, I just want to sort of slightly declare a hand that I am half Dutch, and the Dutch have got many, many cities, economically very vibrant cities that have developed and have shown the red card to the car and the green card to the bicycle. So I think that's the first thing. And how would I do that? I'm going to take a very radical vision about motor traffic in Jericho and Walton Manor. And my presumption is that there should only be motor traffic for residents, and to support tradesmen to residents, and etc., and deliveries to business. The business deliveries can take place largely at certain times of the day, so they will not be present between 8 a.m. and whatever, 8 p.m. And there will be only residents. Now, I know there could be quite a lot of squeaking about that, but I think it can only be called a low traffic neighborhood if really concrete measures are taken to deal with the traffic. Moving the traffic from Walton Street to St. Bernard's Road, which is what has happened, does not constitute a low traffic neighborhood. It constitutes, great news for Walton Street residents and those using Walton Street. I wouldn't deny that, but it's not a low traffic neighborhood. For a low traffic neighborhood, one has to have low traffic. And how would I achieve that? I'm going to be Dutch and a bit authoritarian, and I'm going to say no free parking, no meter parking, no business parking, no business drop-off. That includes schools. So that's a very radical vision, but I think, frankly, is the only way forward. And lots of towns have done that. And that, to be honest, would almost deal with the traffic problem. To get politicians, to get local people on board, to get business on board, I can entirely see that might be an issue, but I do believe that is the way forward, because one needs a high quality physical environment to develop the rest. And I personally like electric cars. They're an evolving technology. One can have bus gates at Walton Street, also St. Bernard's Road. I've applied for St. Bernard's Road to be made in the first wave a green zero emission zone, just like South Walton Street is going to be a green zero emission zone. I see no reason why it's just South Walton Street. I think it should be the whole of Jericho, the whole of Walton Manor, including St. Bernard's Road. And I know there's controversy, but that's what I'm for. So the physical environment, I absolutely loved Joel's thought about widening pavements and then creating an additional physical environment with plants and appropriate trees. So the first I was saying was the physical environment. The second was space on the pavement. So I think that's really important. In the both pre and post-COVID world, we need space on the pavement for businesses to be able, cafes, shops to be able to develop selling space, particularly post-COVID, which may be with us for a long time with social distancing. And I'd like to see those businesses flourish. So how can those businesses flourish? Sadly, town councils have seen businesses as cash cows, and people who own properties have also seen businesses as cash cows. I mean, I heard years ago, a long time ago, I can't remember how long ago, but 15 or 20 years, the rent on the pub at the end of my street, the Victoria, was something like 50 or 70,000 pounds a year. That was the rent, £1,000 a week for a relatively small space. So we need an understanding by those who charge rates, city and county, that it is really important to develop neighbourhoods, Cowley Road being one, but Walton Street being another, where you cannot use them to lever cash out. The rates and the rents need to be such that you can support individual and iconic businesses. One of the real problems with the high street has been that you need a lot of money to operate in the high street. You have to be a brand like Smiths or Boots. You're the same, you're anonymous, you leave a cash out of the bank, but you're the same everywhere. So a lot of the major high streets in the town centres are dull. They are dying for all sorts of reasons, that being one. Clearly, going online is another. Personally, I believe the old high street is now well and truly dead. And even Oxford High Street, and partly that's a physical environment with buses going up and down, but the old high street is dead. And this is a golden opportunity for the new mini high streets, like the sort of Jourdain district in Amsterdam or Saint-Germain-du-Pré in Paris, to develop new high streets that are individual, with shops that provide what local people need. Now that may be food, it may be clothes, it may be cameras, it may be little things that fix the plumbing, it may be books, it may be a million and one things. It can't be a monoculture. So the Westgate is a monoculture for fashion. If you want fashion, which, as you can see from my t-shirt, I rarely do, but if you want fashion, fine, go there. But I actually think that's also a bit passé. So I think there are lots of drivers to having a highly vibrant community of shops along the strip where there are, but also extending further south. You know, if you go to, as I said, Asia or the streets of Amsterdam, you find little shops in little buildings, viable because the economics work for it. And they, around that, they develop a sense of community. So the public spaces, people want to inhabit the public spaces. People from within the community of whatever income want to inhabit the public spaces, and people from outside the community want to inhabit those public spaces. And from that, then people say, where are you going tonight? Well, I don't really know what to do. Let's go to Walton Street and find something to eat, or we find a late night shop, or you know, we know the theatre that's been built in the old Radcliffe Infirmary site will pour out. Some of my friends are going there. Let's meet them afterwards. So I think this is really important. But I think some of the building blocks, which perhaps we could all, hopefully all agree on, we need that physical environment, which is essentially carless. And I think we need to be ambitious and just say residents only, and electric cars only. What about, I mean... have
you finished, or you got one?
Yeah, I was just going to say one more thing. In terms of the Jericho boatyard, the radical vision in terms of delivery and lorries is it's on the canal. Use the canal boats.
They've rejected that, by the way.
Have they? Are they being the builders or the council?
I know the architects and developers, I think.
Okay.
Just a question about the businesses. You've got shops in Walton Street, always stickers saying "Save Jericho" on their windows.
Yeah.
How are you going to persuade them that actually there's a different way to trade?
Well, it's difficult, but I mean, I think as we've seen from the past 3 or 4 years in the United Kingdom, once people have a mindset, new data and information doesn't change their mind, whatever side of the great divide you're on. So it's explaining it. It's leadership, it's taking them on board. One certainly needs to discuss it with them. But I think the vast majority of these businesses in the past did not depend on car traffic. The interim car park is the car park in St Giles, and asking the city or county council that at night, the Woodstock Road has a lot of capacity for cars, but only at night. If they're not going to build an underground car park, it's showing them the way forward. Some of them won't believe you, some will. I think a lot of things were interacting to lead to a decline in business pre-COVID, and I don't think anyone really goes to shop by car on Little Clarendon Street or Walton Street, because last year or whenever, you could never guarantee you could park, and parking would be a pest. So who's going to do that? Certainly I wouldn't do that. So I think that the amount of business they got from car was very small, and creating a new environment will easily outweigh whatever they lose. Easily.
They don't see it that way, you see. I speak as a man who got 24,000 people marching up and down Little Clarendon Street, last year.
Yeah.
There are 4,500 people who work within half a mile of Little Clarendon Street.
Yeah.
That's workers, much less locals. That's a good starter for any business, isn't it?
It's a fantastic starter, absolutely fantastic. And I think, if I know people now who live in North Oxford, but on the sort of the east side, but when they walk into town, they actually quite like crossing over and walking down Walton Street, because there are, I'll only say the beginnings, but the beginnings of this environment. So take what's being created there and extend it to the whole area. And there would be a sense of justice about that. And in St Bernard's Road, we'd cheer from the rafters. We've created something that's sort of a great vision, that's exciting, sense of community, and we would deal with our traffic problem as well.
So looking on for 5 years, do you see there being a vibrant cafe culture in Walton Street?
Well, it's going to depend upon real leadership from the county, from local politicians. And some politicians have stepped up to the mark. And by leader, I mean people who've got a sense of direction, but will listen, as Joel and Christopher were saying. Listening is really important, and but also making the decisions. So we need articulate voices, marching with the flag and taking us forward. I think people will listen if there's a sense of energy. I know that there are groups beginning to coalesce between Observatory Street, St Bernard's Road, Leckford Road and Kingston Road, which do have a vision which could create this. And I think if it may have to be a grassroots movement, but the optimistic me says yes, the realistic me hesitates.
Holland, you declared a half Dutch interest. Does it really work? Do low car areas really work? Pedestrianisation really work in Holland?
It's certainly my impression. Years ago, I grew up partly in The Hague, and there were large parts of that already in the 60s, and that old were pedestrianised. And more recently, my brother lived in Amsterdam, and I've got a cousin living in Utrecht, and another. And it does work. Now, will it work everywhere all the time? Well, of course not. But will it work in a lot of places most of the time with thought? Yes. And Jericho, Walton Manor, North Oxford is prosperous. I think it's yearning for somewhere like this, for the local people to spend their money, and those who don't have a lot of money to benefit from the infrastructure. And so, yes.
And what message would you give to the people in Jericho Connections who seem to think that they represent the majority?
It's of course, some of their aims I'll put my hand up, I'm not against, because something that reduces the traffic that goes up St Bernard's Road, one of the things about being a sort of self-appointed leader is one can have grand principles, but at the end of the day, one finds that a lot of people will only get interested or vote for their own very narrow interests, regardless of the grand principles. So, and that's where leadership comes in. So, I think to return to the status quo and just reopen Walton Street to where we were, I don't think that's the way forward. I think what the closure of Walton Street has done is it's crystallized thinking that there's been a very, very serious traffic problem in Jericho and Walton Manor. And it's now got a lot of people thinking about solutions. And I think there are solutions along the line that Joelle mentioned of widening the pavement and increasing the physical environment, and perhaps combined with mine of, because I can't believe most people who live in Jericho and Walton Manor would not individually agree to low traffic neighborhood zone residents only as a principle. And I think with that, one can move on from where we are, but we have to move forward, not backwards.
Okay, I mean, people ask me, I'm supposed to have a vision. My vision is low traffic, clean air, thriving local shops and cafe culture. You know, it's a beacon to the world. You notice that London is now doing it, Birmingham's doing it,
yeah.
Manchester's doing it, lots of other people are doing it. We have a lot to show the world. Now, as I said at the beginning, I did invite 15 people to turn up, and only 3 have. One of the people I did invite was Jericho Connections, and there they are. The empty chair says it all, as always. It was going to be a block of ice, but we give them an empty chair. I mean, I would want to ask them why their argument's so bad, why they're so easy to knock down, why they don't accept the reality that it's closed until May 2021. You know, stop fighting, look forward, look positive. And do you really want the rat run back? And some positive things. Think about what can be done is what I think you've been saying, Patrick. You know, let's think creatively on what can be done here, not to let's go back to what it was, and let's put signs up in a shop saying £585,000 and you go and close the street. What does that achieve? Who knows? So does anybody, is the previous 2 speakers want to make any points before we finish? Joelle or Father Christopher?
Well, I'm very, very sort of excited by those visions. Actually, I'm all for all of that. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would want to not happen is a concert hall necessarily, because St Barnabas does a good concert venue sometimes, but that's that's just a minor issue. But yeah, no, the rest of the visions are very exciting, and I think it could work really well.
You and the Sheldonian will be picketing not to have a concert hall there, will you?
Well, I'd rather sit in St Barnabas than at the Sheldonian, I can tell you. And if
it's more comfortable, isn't it?
Well, and if you were to be able to do what St John the Evangelist managed to do, which is to have decent chairs, that would make an enormous difference. You have the advantage of having underfloor heating there, which is massive. And some good loos now, and interval facilities. I agree with you. I'd much rather, as long as people go there on foot.
Yes.
I just wanted to say one thing to Patrick about, we talk about people using bicycles, and that's very true. But I do think we do have to bear in mind that there are, I don't know what the latest, I mean, I looked up the census, but the last census is 11 years old or so, or 2011. But we do have an aged population in Jericho who can't use bicycle, shouldn't be asked to go anywhere by bicycle.
No.
So I think, Joelle, perhaps an idea is you have a Jericho taxi service. You know, somebody somehow subscribes to a taxi service that goes Jericho only. I did try to sort of launch that with Mr. Ali's people in the shop, because they're all full of taxi drivers. And he looked at me and he said, they've got to make money. They're not going to do a special deal for Jericho.
They're busy making money in other ways in their taxis, those guys anyway.
The elderly could have taxis or disabled scooters or cars with badges. And of course, one needs to involve them in the community. That's very important. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's no reason why there shouldn't be shopping buses, regular some form of transport for the old and vulnerable. And any other comments from anybody before we end our dream session?
Well, I'd just like to thank all the speakers. I think this has been, for me, I don't know about the broader audience, I speak about myself, I think a very engaging and optimistic vision for the future.
Should we do it again a couple of months' time, or maybe do it physically in a couple of months' time?
Well, I don't know that
Yes.
it needs to be that soon, because I think that in a way we need to wait until see what happens post-COVID, really, because
Yeah,
we've got no
go on.
facts and figures, you know. It's all pie in the sky at the moment. No, I mean, although I can see, I agree with Patrick, and I think it's good if Observatory and St. Bernard's and Lackford and so on, all those streets need support, because I can see that it's just pushing the traffic that way. But I don't know whether, I think 2 months is too soon.
Okay, all right, but I do think that Mount Place will be a litmus test for changes in Jericho and indeed in Walton Street, because if Mount Place becomes a vibrant local community garden stroke centre, then my hopes will be up. And I think that, you know, that's something we all ought to work towards, and, you know, not just little groups here, little groups there.
Well, I think people should write to the Parks Department and, you know, ask them what they're planning to do there.
Go ahead, go knock on the door.
Yes, I'm already, I mean, I've been in touch with the Parks Department today, because the planters in Little Clarendon Street are dry, and we don't know who's responsible for them. So we're actually watering them at the moment.
All right, knock on the door of the leader of the council. You know where she lives.
Well, I don't know which door it is, but I think she should be left in peace, poor woman.
Okay, very good. And any other dream comments before I end this little session? Thank you all very much indeed. There's not going to be one of these next Wednesday, because Layla couldn't make Wednesday. She will make Monday, the 1st of June at 4 o'clock for an hour, which we'd be interested in, and then followed by the social history of Jericho, which has already had 35 people registered for it. He's got a big fan club, Danny. So thank you all very much indeed. And if you have any other ideas for these, because I suspect this will continue well into July, because I don't think we'll be physically meeting much before September. But thank you, and good night.